What is up, my Squirtleites? It is I, your king. Today's episode of The Decree is going to be more or less a response to the response that I got on my third episode of The Decree, where I said that the decision that Game Freak is making to leave out the national dex in Pokemon Sword and Shield is a bad one. And I say the response to the response because I'm not going to really talk about Game Freak's decision at all in this video. I still stand by all the things that I said in that video, absolutely, but I don't want people to get confused and mistake the criticisms that I made in that video for vitriol in any sort of way. I'm not actually mad at Game Freak. I'm mad at the decision that's been made, and I do think that it is a very poor one, and it is going to bite them in the butt in the future, and is definitely I think, tipping point in the franchise in a way that we are definitely going to see a slump in sales in the future. I don't think it's going to be a huge difference maker, but it might be enough to raise some eyebrows. Now, putting all of that aside, we're not going to talk about that anymore. I instead want to hone in on the response to not just that video, but the backlash to this decision that Game Freak has made in general, and how that applies to us as gamers and consumers in the game industry in general. Because I am not just talking about the specific incident, but a lot of incidents that we have had in the past where the reaction to said decisions by the game industry have been not always justified. Let's just say that much. So my decree in this episode is that, for crying out loud, we need to temper our backlash just a little bit. Now, far be it from me to defend any of the decisions that are made by these companies ever. I am not one to do that. Remember that these are companies that we are talking about, and when the companies make these sorts of decisions, screw them. Honestly, they're companies. They are entities. They are not people. They are corporations that have been put together by a conglomerate of, for the most part, soul-sucking vampires that only care about money. Don't care about those. What I do care about are the people, the developers that are on lower rungs on the ladder that very often I see gamers direct their anger and misguided vitriol towards. And this is where it becomes a bit of a problem for me, and this is where I want us to stop for a second. Now, that's not to say that we can't be critical of these decisions. Remember, game developers are, for the most part, artists. They have to have a sense of passion in the thing that they're doing. Otherwise, they wouldn't be making games to begin with, obviously. I mean, game development is a talent. It is a skill. You need to learn how to do many different things within that sphere, such as programming, art direction, storytelling, and all manner of other things that I'm not going to try to list off the top of my head. But you get the gist of where I'm coming from. Game development requires passion, otherwise they wouldn't be doing it. It's not so cynically motivated as it is on the publisher end of things when it comes to video games. That's not to say there haven't been game developers who have been cynically motivated to make the games that they make, but for the most part, you can pretty much count on game developers actually caring about the things that they make, as opposed to, again, publishers. However, we need to also remember that they are in fact making a product that we choose to consume. Therefore, we are allowed to be critical of the thing that we consume. We are paying money for it. We are allowed to give criticism and to either like or dislike the product that we have purchased, as is the case with any product. And developers are not exempt from that criticism. If you are making a product that somebody is expected to pay for, you must be required to field that criticism, and if you cannot handle said criticism, you're probably in the wrong career. Now, what developers are exempt from and should always be exempt from is harassment. Harassment is not okay. Threats are not okay. Saying that you're going to do this and this to said person is never ever okay, regardless of how much you like or dislike a video game. And to top that off, in almost all instances, it's actually illegal. Now, I know a lot of people like to hide behind their internet personas, and they feel very safe in doing so. But the thing is you're not really safe. It's more so up to the person that you are targeting to determine whether or not you are safe in those instances, okay? A lot of times people just don't want to deal with it. They don't want the hassle. They don't want you to angrily attack them, and therefore they don't want to deal with you any longer. They would rather just block you and move on, and that's fine. If that's all you're going for, you're still a piece of crap, but you've gotten what you deserved. However, should they choose to, if you have harassed said individual, decide to retaliate in some way, guess what? They can, through basically any social media platform that you use, through heck, even just an email, they have the means and the proof through which litigation can happen, regardless of who you are. I don't care if you're the smallest, most insignificant peon with an anime avatar on Twitter who only has 2 followers. You still can be sued. You still can have a restraining order filed against you. Those things can happen. So harassment is never okay. Almost completely disregarding the actual, emotional and mental abuse that you are inflicting on the people that you are harassing. Let's move on to that next bit. Okay, these are people. Please remember that. And like I said before, they almost universally have passion about the things that they're creating. Believe it or not, I know that Game Freak is often criticized for the fact that, they just kind of go through the motions at this point, and they often don't even maintain a lot of their best ideas, and therefore people think, well, since they're just shelling out these games like it's nothing at this point, obviously they don't care about it enough. That is possibly, potentially, and I'm not even going to speak for them, but potentially true for the people that are, required to hit those deadlines, aka the directors, the ones who are supposed to keep the schedule of the game on track. But as for the people who are creating the characters, the people who are having to come up with these ideas, the people who are drawing each and every single Pokemon, the people who have to coding each and every single move and ability, the people who have to animate those so-called not so great animations that you're seeing in Pokemon Sword and Shield that people are criticizing, those are human beings, and they do have a passion, and they probably wouldn't be there if they didn't. Now, obviously, this stretches well beyond the context of just this whole entire Pokemon Sword and Shield backlash. There have been so many instances in the past where this has just gone way too far. And sometimes, yes, I will admit, it hasn't always been the community that's been at fault here. In fact, a lot of times, it's the community in general is more or less okay. It's usually down to just a couple of certifiably insane, borderline subhuman shitweevils who spawn, and I'm pretty sure this is how this happens, spawn directly from the GameFAQs server database itself, like the newborn from Alien Resurrection. They just coagulate into existence and leak onto the internet, screaming about how No Man's Sky ruined their life. And yes, there's nothing that can be done about those, and I hesitate to use this word, people. But unfortunately, they are still a part of the problem. And as for the rest of us who are not those people, we can't afford to compound that problem, because the more that we do that, the worse the dialogue gets, okay? And often it's done so unfairly. I mean, I will fully admit that. There are so many instances where, because of these insane bits of backlash where the community just takes it way too far, that often these publishers and the developers, and even sometimes the gaming press itself, feel like they can use these instances to justify a lack of communication and pulling the wool over everyone's eyes. Because, I mean, you've seen it before. You've seen instances where the community is too angry at us, therefore we can't tell them that we're doing this thing, and that gives us right to just throw these things that they don't like into the game anyway and hope it sticks. And that's not good. We need to have a dialogue between the developers and between the gaming press as a gaming community. We need to all work together to make games better and to actually get the things that we want, so that in turn they can get the things that they want. They can get the money that they want. It's not healthy for either side to completely close that dialogue off, because the more disconnect there is, the worse products get. And circling back to what I said before about criticism. Criticism is fine, okay? What you need to do in that regard is you need to voice it in a place that is appropriate, and there are many ways to do this. I know for a fact that certain companies, not a lot of them, but some of them definitely have direct lines of communication in which you can send a message straight to them and give them your feedback, or an email or something along those lines. But for the most part, the best way to do this is to just remain intelligent in the way that you talk, okay? Don't foam at the mouth. Don't get angry. Try to concisely and smartly word your criticisms and post those in a place that are going to be easy to see. Social media accounts are good. Don't throw in insults, all right? Just put a post on a social media account and be like, hey, this is what I think about it, and just leave it be. Maybe go on a subreddit. I know very often community managers for most games really do actually pay attention to subreddits. Now, obviously, they have to do so in a careful way because of how awful those subreddits can be, but I know for a fact that there are eyes watching those subreddits for specific games. Make a post, nicely word it. Sometimes you are going to be corrected. Sometimes there are going to be people who disagree with you, but just try to put your criticisms out there and just leave it at that, okay? The only other thing that you are responsible for doing is either buying or not buying it. Not buying it and buying it will speak louder than anything else that you can do in this world. Screaming in rage and cussing out the people who are responsible for the game that you're trying to criticize is just as deafening as utter silence, because you are just going to get muzzled. You're going to get muted, you're going to get blocked, and your voice will never be heard again. You will be less than irrelevant to those people the second that you try to talk like that. Now keep in mind, please, again, we're talking about people here. People to people interactions. People do not respond to vitriol. They do not respond to anger. They do not respond to personal attacks. That stuff doesn't work. And heck, even companies don't respond to those things because they're companies and not people, and you can't really personally attack a company unless you are a terrorist, which why would you do that? That's just stupid in its own right. But at least learn to differentiate. At least learn where to place what criticism, where to place what words, where to say the things that need to be said. I'm not saying that anger and righteous indignation doesn't have its place. It does, but don't use it on people. Don't use it on people that are trying hard, that are working their fingers to the bone to try to make these things that will put food on their table and feed their families. Please don't do that. That's all I ask. Be kind to one another. Remember and respect the humanity of one another. And as always, fuck electronic arts. I'll see you all in the next one.